Welcome back to part 3 of one painting 4 ways. So this one is actually available in my Patreon, and the step-by-step how-tos, the tracing guide, and everything else is available on my Patreon, which is a link down below. It's a $5 a month, and you get access to everything that's been in my Patreon since I started. In the previous videos, I have done it with Posca pen, with acrylic gouache, watered down to give it a different texture, and in this video, I'm going to be painting it with watercolor, and I'll probably do some mixed media because, you know, these pencil lines are going to show up, and so this one will probably be the last one in the series, which I was going to do one that was just going to be mixed media, another one, but I decided this watercolor one will end up being my mixed media one because watercolor is going to show the lines. So I'm going to start this one with the background, and I actually have 2 watercolor palettes here. These are Prima Watercolor palettes. They're a whole mix of the palettes, so I don't know which ones come from which. I do have the pastels, the Decadent Pies, the tropical. Actually, I have like probably 6 of them, and I've mixed them up. So, but they are Prima, and I really do like them. So I'm going to start by working with my lightest color first, and I'm planning on painting the background this pink color, and I really do want it to be watery. I don't want it to look like I did with the acrylic gouache, where I got a watercolor look, but I do have the opacity. So with this one, I'm really working to make it look watercolor. I want you to be able to tell, and I'm going straight out to the edge of the little piece of watercolor paper here, because I want to go all the way to the edge. And so when you do this, just make sure that you can keep adding while it's wet if you want to get a different effect. This is really light, so it's washing it out. I'm going to actually flip this light off and see it. There we go. We can see it a little bit better. I do have fluorescents in the studio, so the light is fairly bright. It's just not as bright for me. You can actually see it better on screen than in person. It's brighter on screen. So I'm just going to keep painting my background, adding a little bit of water here and there, and adding some extra pigment in, and let it feather out. So that's what I like about watercolor, is I can start really light and then just keep adding things as adding more if I want it darker. Alright, so, but as you can see, that line is going to be there, so I'm going to end up going over it with a pen probably, just to make it a little bit better. So I'm going to pick up some brown for my, because it's watercolor, I don't really mind if it does bleed a little bit, because to me that's the whole point of watercolor, is not having those hard lines. So if it's still, I'm not waiting for anything to dry completely. And this is one of my favorites. I cannot remember the color. It came in the complexions set, but the complexions set, if you have any of the other Prima, the complexion set are in the other ones. It's not new colors, and I didn't realize that because I had bought it prior to buying some of the others. And I think it's also in the tropical. I think it's called coconut. Like the husk of a coconut, I think is what it's called. But yeah, I really like this golden color. And I haven't picked up my watercolors in a few months. So this is, this is a fun experiment for me, is working on these different ways of painting. So now, to let this dry a little bit, I'm going to work on the lid and just, let's see, Is that black? Yep, it's black. Some of these Primas are so highly pigmented that it looks like it's black, but it's actually like a blue-green, because I've actually made that mistake one time. And so I've tried to make sure that the black is beside like a brown or something, and I put the green with something else, but I didn't do that here, and that is actually green. So, like I said, the whole point of watercolor is to, if I was really trying to keep the texture of the jar lid, I would have left the white, but I just didn't do it that way. I'll go back and, since this one's going to be my mixed media one, I will go back and add white in. Alright, so now we can either work on our jar, or you can work next on the hearts. I think I'm going to go ahead and do the hearts first, just so that they can dry, and then I'll work on the jar. The jar I am going to make sure I leave the highlight white as I'm painting it. So there's my purple, and I use this background, this blotter paper, for making journals, so I'm not worried about, you know, I paint over it, paint onto it, and then I end up, it works for me. I really like this bright red. This design actually came about for a greeting card design that I did that is available in my Etsy shop. I also wholesale my greeting cards, and so this was one of my Valentine's cards. It's called the Jar of Love, and there is a link to my Etsy shop below if you'd like to check out the greeting cards. Trying to make sure is whatever blue I pick, it's not going to be the blue I use for the jar. I'm probably going to use this pastel blue here as my mason jar. By going ahead and painting the hearts and then letting them dry for a little bit, I will actually be able to paint the jar without worrying about the black coming into it too much, which is fine, really. It's not that big of a deal. It's just, I really don't want it to blend in too much. Some of these paints, you can see which colors I like a lot, because they are pretty used. I have mixed a bunch of palettes, because they only come with 10. And so I put the ones down the center. So it's basically, I've probably got 4 palettes in these 2 by doing this, and yeah, I like that. Deep green, I told you about. It's really, really saturated. And works well. And I think I'm gonna do this orangey yellow over here. Alright, I'm going to let this dry just a little bit, and I will come back when it's dry. I don't know how well you can see this on camera, but the reason I like this paint, it does granulate, and a lot of granulating paint is very expensive. And I've never really bought quote-unquote granulating paint, but that is what the Prima paints do, and that is what I really like about these paints, is that they do granulate. So I'm going to let this finish drying. Okay, while I was waiting for this to dry, I mixed this blue, pale baby blue, with this like really pale blue, and mixed them together, and I'm going to made a pretty good bit to use for my jar. But I'm going to go on in and add a little water to the area so that I'm getting more of a wet on wet, but I need a little bit of pigment in there to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put my highlight over here, so I'm not going to like paint in that area, and then just add more water. So like I said, this is a very granulating paint. I love it because it gives me, like, it makes it look like I've done a lot more work than I have, or the paint's done the work for me. And I don't mind if it overlaps a little bit, because that's, you know, that's watercolor. And I'm not painting, I painted the hearts fully, but I'm not painting the jar 100%. I'm leaving some white space to make it, you know, so you can really see that it's reflecting. That's the fun about watercolor. You can make it look like glass very easily. Alright, so now this did blend in. That's fine, because you know, sometimes when you see something through a glass, the color refracts. So I'm not, you know, I'm not upset about that. It's not exactly what I wanted, but, and there comes that red coming out. Let's go over this way. Just add a little more pigment. Add a bit of water on your brush to give, and try to fill in. That is what's so fun about watercolor to me, is that it's that easy. I've got, especially with these granulating paints, I can just add a little more paint pigment into it, and it's gonna give me a look like I'm gonna see all of that different detail. So I really hope you've enjoyed these paintings. I was going to add some mixed media to this, but I really like the way this watercolor turned out. I like what it's done. I like how the jar lid, and yeah, so like I said, this one, the how-to, is in my Patreon. And it is a 4x4 canvas. It's not a video, it is a step-by-step instructions with the tracing template for the jar. The first video that posted was the Posca pen painting. The next one was acrylic gouache that was watered down to get it to look granulating. And then this video here, all about watercolor. So I hope you enjoyed watching this painting session, these painting sessions that I've done with this one design, because it is, you know, it is amazing to see how one design looks so different based on the materials that you use. So this is just craft acrylic paint, acrylic gouache, Posca paint pens, and Prima watercolor. So I hope you liked this video. Click that like button if you did, hit subscribe, get that bell notification, and leave me a comment below of what is your favorite supply to use. Thanks for watching. See you soon.